Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how we can add decimals. So when we add decimals, we're going to use the same rules that we did for adding integers, and I made a separate video on that, and I'll link that in the cards right now just to remember those rules. When we look at these three examples today, example number one, we have two negative decimals. Number two and number three, we have one positive and one negative. So we'll kind of review those rules throughout this video, but feel free to check out that previous video to see a little more in-depth description of those rules. So number one, we see negative 3.3 plus negative 2.7. Anytime we have integers, or in this case decimals, where these signs are the same, we can go ahead and add those absolute values. So that would be like just having 3.3 plus 2.7. So now when we add those, we can add vertically. 7 plus 3 would be 10. So we put our 0 down and then we carry the 1. We're going to drop our decimal exactly where we see it when we're adding decimals. And then we could do 3 plus 2 is 5, and then 5 plus 1 would be 6. So 6.0 or just 6 would be our answer for right now. And now we got to choose our sign. So we look back and see that both of our original numbers were negative, so that means the sign of our solution also needs to be negative. So our answer for number one, negative 6. Number two, we have negative 5.35 plus 4. So now we have two different signs. So the rule says we need to actually subtract these absolute values. In the order we're going to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger. So this would be like 5.35 minus 4. And I'll go ahead and write it as minus 4.00 since our first decimal has to the hundredths place. So now we can subtract. This would be 5, this would be 3, and this would be 1, right? And now we need to choose our sign. Well, which original number, negative 5.35, or 4, had the larger absolute value? Well, that was our negative number, right? So our solution also needs to be negative. So negative 1.35 would be our answer for number 2. And lastly, for number 3, similar to number 2, we have one positive and one negative. So we're going to subtract, and we're going to subtract the smaller absolute value, which would be 0.9, from the larger absolute value, which would be 1.65. So we're going to do 1.65 minus 0.09. Notice I added a 0 in the ones place there, just to create alignment between the number of decimals or the number of place values that my numbers have. And now we can subtract. So we can't do 5 minus 9, so we can go ahead and borrow from this tenths column, the tenths place value. And now we could do 15 minus 9, which would be 6, and then we have a 5 right here, and then we can bring down our 1. So we have 1.56, and now we need to decide, okay, should our answer be positive or negative? So we look back at our original numbers, and the larger absolute value was a positive number, so we're going to leave that answer positive, okay? So we would have 1.56 would be our final answer for number 3, and that is how you can add decimals.